There is a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk into a room flexing. It doesn't need applause, it doesn't need validation. And it certainly doesn't need your permission to exist. It is quiet. It is patient. And it is the most terrifying thing you will ever encounter in another human being, because when you come face to face with it, somewhere deep in your gut, you already know you are not ready for it. Over 400 years ago, a man walked the mountains of Japan, alone, dirty, hungry, and completely at war with himself. He fought over 60 duels and never lost a single one. Not because he was the biggest, not because he was the fastest, but because by the time any opponent stepped in front of him, Musashi had already fought the hardest battle on earth, the one inside his own mind. And he had won. His name was Miyamoto Musashi. And what he discovered about mental and physical strength is not just history. It is a warning. It is a challenge. And for the right person sitting in this room today, it is an invitation. See, most people spend their entire lives building a comfortable version of strength. A version that looks good on the outside but collapses the moment life stops cooperating. They train their body but coddle their mind. They talk about discipline but negotiate with their excuses every single morning. And I am not here to judge that, because I have been that man too. We have all been that man. But Musashi refused comfort like it was poison. He understood something that most of us will spend a lifetime running away from. That the scariest level of strength is not something you are given. It is something you become only after you have stripped yourself of everything soft, everything fearful, and everything false about who you think you are. And I need you to hear me clearly this morning. That level of strength is available to you, not next year, not after the circumstances change. Right now, in this body, with this mind, in this season of your life. But you have to be willing to go where most men simply refuse to go. You have to be willing to pick up the sword, not against another man, but against the weakest, most comfortable, most excuse-making version of yourself. And you have to swing it without mercy. That is what we are here to talk about today. That is the conversation Musashi started 4 centuries ago. And I believe, with everything in me, that it is the most important conversation you could have in this moment of your life. There is something Miyamoto Musashi understood about the sword that most men never grasp about life. It was never truly about the blade. It was about the man holding it. And the man holding it had to be so completely prepared, so ruthlessly conditioned from the inside out, that the moment of conflict was never really a moment of danger. It was simply a moment of confirmation. Musashi did not train so that he could win. He trained so that losing became a biological impossibility within his mind. That is a distinction that sounds subtle but cuts deep. Most people prepare for success. Musashi prepared himself in a way that made failure structurally impossible, not by controlling the enemy, but by annihilating every internal condition that could produce defeat. Think about what that actually requires. It requires a man to look honestly at himself, not the version he presents to the world, not the version he performs for people who admire him, but the raw, unfiltered truth of who he is when no one is watching. It requires him to find the places where he hesitates, where he doubts, where comfort has quietly been building walls around his potential, and then it requires him to go to war with those places. Not tomorrow, not when he feels ready, every single day, without exception, without negotiation. Musashi's sword never rested because Musashi never rested. His physical training was legendary, but it was his mental relentlessness that made him truly unconquerable. He walked away from relationships, from wealth, from every conventional comfort a man of his era could have claimed. Not because he was broken, but because he understood that attachment to comfort is the first thing that makes a man flinch. And a man who flinches has already begun to lose before the contest ever begins. This is the part that most modern men find deeply uncomfortable to hear. We live in a world that has made softness extraordinarily convenient. We have built entire industries around helping men feel strong, while avoiding the very experiences that actually produce strength. We celebrate the image of discipline, while quietly designing lives that never truly demand it. And the sword, Musashi's sword, it sees right through all of it. Real strength, the kind that does not break under pressure, the kind that does not negotiate with fear, the kind that makes other men go quiet when you walk into a room. That strength is not built during the easy seasons. It is forged in the moments when every reasonable voice in your head is telling you to stop, to rest, to settle, and you choose, deliberately, consciously, almost violently. Most men have a complicated relationship with fear. They spend the majority of their lives either running from it, disguising it, or negotiating with it, dressing it up in reasonable language, calling it caution, calling it wisdom, calling it patience. When deep down, if they are being brutally honest with themselves, they know exactly what it is. It is fear, plain, undecorated, and completely in control of the direction their life is moving. Musashi did not have that relationship with fear, and understanding why is what separates his story from every motivational tale you have ever been told. Because Musashi did not conquer fear by avoiding the experiences that produced it. He conquered fear by walking directly into the darkest, most dangerous, most uncertain corridors of human experience. And he stayed there long enough to realize that the darkness itself had no real power over a man who refused to look away from it. This is what makes his strength genuinely terrifying to witness, not the physical dimension of it, though that was extraordinary. What is truly frightening about a man like Musashi is the look in his eyes. It is the look of someone who has already visited the worst possible outcome in his own mind, has sat with it, has made peace with it, and has returned from that place completely unbothered. When you face a man like that, you are not facing his skill. You are facing his freedom. And freedom from fear in another man is one of the most psychologically destabilizing things a human being can encounter. Musashi walked through his own darkness deliberately. He chose suffering. He chose isolation. He chose the cold mountain and the empty stomach and the uncertainty of the road. Not because he was punishing himself, but because he understood something profound about the architecture of fear. Fear does not live in the dangerous place. Fear lives in the distance between you and the dangerous place. The moment you close that distance, the moment you actually arrive at the thing you were afraid of, fear loses the only weapon it ever had, which is your imagination running wild in the gap between where you are and where you do not want to go. Every man in this room has a darkness he has not walked through yet, a conversation he keeps postponing, a version of himself he is afraid to test, a chapter of life he is standing at the edge of, looking in, telling himself he will enter it when the conditions are better, when he is more prepared, when the risk feels smaller. And what Musashi would say to that man, what history itself says to that man, is that the conditions will never be perfect, the preparation will never feel complete, and the fear will never voluntarily step aside and give you. There is a concept that the modern world has almost completely lost, and losing it has cost men more than they will ever fully calculate. It is the concept of emptiness as a source of power, not emptiness as depression, not emptiness as lack, but emptiness as a deliberate condition, a chosen state of being where a man has stripped away everything unnecessary, everything excessive, everything that his ego has convinced him he cannot live without, and discovered perhaps for the first time in his life exactly how strong he actually is, when there is nothing left to hide behind. Musashi lived this truth at a level that most men today cannot even conceptualize. He owned almost nothing. He had no permanent home, no wife, no accumulated wealth, no social status he was protecting, no reputation he was carefully managing for public consumption. By every conventional measurement of success in his era, and honestly in ours too, he had nothing. And yet he was the most formidable human being in the room, in every room he ever entered. Because what he understood was this: every attachment a man carries is also a weight a man carries. And weight, in the moment of truth, becomes weakness. Think about what you are carrying right now. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, psychologically. Think about how many of your daily decisions are not actually driven by vision or purpose or genuine desire, but by the fear of losing something you have already accumulated, the comfort of your routine, the opinion of people whose judgment you have given far too much real estate in your mind, the identity you have constructed so carefully that you would rather shrink your actual potential than risk that identity being challenged or dismantled. These are not strengths. These are anchors. And Musashi, with the clarity that only radical emptiness can produce, saw that with absolute precision. When you have nothing to protect, you move differently. You think differently. You make decisions from a place of pure intention rather than defensive positioning. You stop performing strength and start being it. Because there is no longer an audience you are trying to convince, including the audience inside your own head. This is why emptiness, practiced deliberately and embraced honestly, becomes the most counterintuitive source of power available to a man. The world tells you to accumulate more comfort, more approval, more certainty, more security. Musashi lived his entire life as a direct and unapologetic argument against that instruction. And the proof was in the result. Not one defeat, not one moment where the weight of what he was protecting caused him to hesitate at the wrong time, to second guess at the wrong moment, to flinch when everything inside him needed to be absolutely and completely. Before Musashi ever unsheathed his sword in front of another man, the real battle had already been fought and won. That is the detail that history tends to gloss over when it celebrates his undefeated record, when it counts the duels and marvels at the outcomes. People look at the results and assume the story is about combat. But the combat was never the story. The combat was simply the receipt, the printed confirmation of a transaction that had already been completed long before any opponent arrived on the field. The war within. That is the battlefield that produced everything Musashi became. And it is the battlefield that most men spend their entire lives desperately trying to avoid, because unlike a physical opponent, the enemy inside you knows every weakness you have ever had. It knows every failure you have tried to bury. It knows every promise you made to yourself and quietly abandoned. It knows the exact words to use and the exact moment to use them to make you stop, to make you doubt, to make you retreat back into the smaller, safer, more manageable version of yourself that requires nothing extraordinary from you. Musashi did not just fight that enemy, he studied it. He sat with it in the silence of mountains and the stillness of empty rooms and the long hours of pre-dawn darkness that most men sleep through because waking up means facing themselves. He did not flinch from what he found. And what he found, if we are being completely honest, was everything that lives inside every one of us. The self-pity dressed as reflection, the arrogance dressed as confidence, the laziness dressed as strategy, the fear dressed as wisdom. He found it all, named it, and then he dismantled it piece by piece with the same precision and the same ruthlessness he brought to every physical discipline in his life. This is the work that no one applauds. There is no crowd watching when a man finally tells himself the truth at 3 in the morning. There is no ceremony when a man identifies the specific story he has been telling himself for years that has been quietly keeping him from the life he knows he is capable of living. There is no trophy for the moment a man looks the weakest version of himself directly in the eye and refuses, absolutely refuses, to let that version speak for him anymore. But that invisible work, that silent, brutal internal reckoning, is the entire foundation upon which every visible result in a man's life is either built or broken. Because the man who has never confronted himself honestly will always be vulnerable to himself. He will train his body and neglect his mind. He will build his career and avoid his character. He will project strength outward while something unresolved continues to erode everything from. There is a word that men rarely apply to themselves honestly, and that word is inevitable. Not in the arrogant sense, not in the boastful, chest-forward, loud declaration kind of way that has become so common in a world saturated with motivational noise, but in the quiet, bone-deep, unshakable sense of a man who has done the work so completely, so consistently, and so honestly that his arrival at greatness is no longer a question of possibility. It is simply a matter of time. That kind of inevitability is not claimed. It is constructed, and the construction material is suffering chosen on purpose. Musashi did not stumble into becoming the greatest swordsman in Japanese history. He engineered it, deliberately, painfully, over decades of chosen discomfort that most men would have abandoned in the first season. He did not wait for inspiration to strike. He did not wait until he felt motivated, until the environment cooperated, until someone gave him permission or recognition or resources. He decided at a cellular level, at the level where a man's deepest commitments actually live, that he was going to become something that had never existed before. And then he paid the price for that decision every single day without complaint and without condition. This is what separates the man who talks about transformation from the man who actually transforms. It is not talent. It is not opportunity. It is not even intelligence. It is the willingness to choose suffering, real suffering, not the comfortable inconvenience that most of us mistake for hardship, as the primary instrument of your own development. To look at the hard path, the long path, the path with no guaranteed outcome and no applause along the way, and to choose it not reluctantly, but deliberately. To choose it because you understand, at a level most men never reach, that everything worth becoming costs exactly that. Every man in this room has a version of himself that is waiting to become inevitable. A version that does not flinch. A version that does not negotiate with excuses or barter with comfort or postpone the hard work until a more convenient season arrives. That version exists right now, not as a fantasy, not as a distant aspiration, but as a direct result of the choices you are willing to make starting from this moment forward. The gap between who you are and who that man is not filled with talent you do not have or time you have not been given. It is filled entirely with suffering you have not yet been willing to choose, with discomfort you have not yet been willing to sustain, with the long, unglamorous daily work of becoming someone that even you did not fully believe was possible, until the moment you finally stop waiting and simply